Come back now, even if you call me out.
Brandi Carlile calls her new record, In These Silent Days, a pandemic album, born from a time of isolation with family at her rural home an hour outside Seattle. A time to stop and reflect on her climb to stardom and where it began, in places like the city's Paragon restaurant and bar.
I remember coming in here right around this time of day,
Yeah.
when I knew I could talk to the manager and I wouldn't be too busy, and I said, hey, I've got a PA system and a guitar player, and if you give me, like, maybe we'll start 6 p.m. on Sunday nights, we'll do it for free for a month, and if a month later you've seen that you have an uptick on Sunday nights, then you could start paying me or feeding us. Or
you might consider paying me?
Yeah.
Gigs at local Seattle spots were the norm for years, along with busking for tips at the famed Pike Place Market. The hardworking life of a very hardworking musician trying to make it.
I was really interested in things like printing and hanging posters and busking and stopping people on the street and handing them a pamphlet and telling them about my show. It's a city that sort of rewards that and values that.
I got in last night and I was just taking a walk and I saw somebody, hammering their poster into a...
You did?
Yeah,
Still?
I did.
Yeah, still got it.
That was you,
Seattle
huh?
still got it. That was absolutely me.
Her stunning performance at the 2019 Grammys of The Joke, a ballad to those who feel marginalized, brought her national attention. Now 40, Carlile told her own coming-of-age story in a recent memoir titled Broken Horses, about growing up poor in rural Washington state, moving from place to place, her father's battles with alcoholism, her mother's aspirations to be a country singer. A self-described misfit, Carlile writes of being gay in a community with few role models and a church that didn't accept her. From the beginning, though, she was, she says, addicted to performing.
Well, it's easy to get addicted to performing because it's quite an adrenaline rush, I would say that it was something that I experienced so young that I just always wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. I wanted to feel understood and seen.
Did you feel misunderstood and unseen?
No, not for the most part, but I felt like I chose those moments to reveal myself.
Her musical collaborators and soulmates, identical twins Phil and Tim Hansaroff, Phil on bass and Tim on guitar. They traveled for years in an old van now permanently parked outside Easy Street Records, another Seattle music landmark where Carlile took us to browse the bins of her heroes, some of whom have become close friends, like Elton John.
You wrote in your book about how you wanted nothing more in life than to be Elton John, it sounds like, when you were a little girl.
Yeah. I fell in love with him when I was like 11 years old, and he was just such a magical beast to me that I felt a kinship to him.
What's kind of cool, I imagine, is now you're right across from him.
I know. Actually, when you put it that way, it's utterly surreal.
Is it?
Yeah, it's very surreal. I mean, these bins, like these record store bins, that you come to as a young music fan and you flip through, you dream about seeing yourself there. I thought it'd be CDs, but what did I know?
All of these lines across my face.
What she did somehow know for certain is that she would make it, even if that took longer than she'd hoped. She writes of being 15 years into her career before receiving a first Grammy nomination. And only later did she come to see how gender and sexual orientation could be barriers to success.
I definitely am still having to overcome it, and I definitely had to overcome it. I wasn't paying much attention because I was in a state for a long time of just euphoria that these dreams were coming true and these things are happening in my life, not knowing that it could still have been bigger and better, and that it indeed was bigger and better for my male counterparts.
It's been particularly true, she says, in her world of country and American roots music.
I chose that album cover.
That's pretty good.
She points to another musician who had become a friend, Tanya Tucker.
Are you guys ready to roll one?
In 2019, Carlile co-produced a critically acclaimed comeback album with Tucker. decades after Tucker had fallen from favor for an outlaw image for which her male counterparts in the 1970s were celebrating.
It made me realize that there are just two very different lanes for women and men, particularly in roots music. Now forget BIPOC people or LGBTQIA plus people. There's not even a lane. I knew I wanted to get involved in that because it's really challenging. It made me feel like I felt as a kid in church, like I don't belong here and that's where I'm going to stay. You know, it's active defiance.
Seems to be changing a little, perhaps? I don't know. What is your impression?
Yeah, it's changing in the tributaries. It's changing on the edges in Americana, folk, roots, bluegrass. There's still a giant metallic steel door shut to country, but we'll see, you know. Somebody's going to get that thing open, and when they do, we're all going to come running in.
Today, Carlile and her wife, Catherine, are parents to 2 daughters.
'Cause I am the mother of Evangeline. When we love someone, we take them to heaven.
She's part of a country supergroup called the Highwomen, formed in 2019. And she speaks up as she sees necessary, including with the recent Grammy nominations. She expressed gratitude, but also wondered aloud why her song Right on Time was shifted to a pop performance category rather than country or Americana, where she sees herself.
I think a lot of queer people are cognizant of, if not sensitive to, being disenfranchised. And the thing that makes that poignant is that there's so many American roots people, there's so many rural people in this country, and people that live in not downtown Seattle, that are so systemically rejected by the correlating culture. Country music, roots music has a vortex, it has a culture. And there are country queers, and they need to see acceptance and affirmation in those places, you know.
Fields that lead for miles.
For now, Brandi Carlile awaits the Grammy Awards ceremony and plans to take her pandemic-era album In These Silent Days on tour, pandemic allowing, in the spring of next year. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown in Seattle.